what like it doesn't always get like really looked at is kind of why governments and economists say we need inflation. And I mean, I believe that we chatted about this in the banking and currency episode. But I'll put you on the spot, Jordan. What's like, so you might not remember this, but what is the reason, the main reason in particular for why we need inflationary currencies?
Oh God.
So not the like, yes, we just already established the kind of why it happens in the general
like the
aspect
how.
of
It's
not the how. Yeah, thank you. It's like why do we want our currencies to be inflationary?
It's there's good, like, well, A, for growth.
Yeah.
Right, but like there's another factor that's just not coming to me right now too. So
Yeah. Well, actually, growth is in a way, growth you could summarize as as I stutter away there. Growth can be described as like the overarching main reason, right? So
like
you hit it right on the head with saying that. In the reason why we want an inflationary currency is that for growth to occur, we need to have the ability for capital, aka like money, right? To be allocated to multiple sources, right? So essentially, inflationary currencies are used as like a tool of commerce. And if you are limited in the supply of that money, then you aren't able to spread out the wealth as far as you would like. And we talked about in the banking and currency episode when Nixon decided to remove the gold standard. The main reason for that was because the limitations on not being able to print money meant that the economy of the United States had to grow a lot slower than what they felt was capable, right?
Or what it could have done.
From an economic powerhouse standpoint, it's like, hey, we should be able to do all these infrastructure things or all of these whatever. But because we only have a limited amount of dollars to kind of share around, we can't kind of cut this up and divide it up into a lot more slices of pie, right?
So what do? Is you make more money.
So you want to have a situation where you can print more money, which if there is more money in circulation, which we already established, that means that the price of goods go up. But indirectly, the reason why you're doing that is because if I can print more money, I can put money into more industries, right? Like I'm not limited in the sense of like, if I only had $100 to spend, that's probably a ridiculous number, but you get the idea of if I had the equivalent of $100 and I'm trying to spend it on absolutely everything, well, unless you can kind of break those dollar values down to smaller and smaller, like that's why we have like you would be doing the equivalent of cents to the dollar type of situation to be able to pay for all of the goods and services, which you can make the argument that there is a level or a degree of inflation that is more acceptable than another, right? Like, so not to go down this rabbit hole, but like the idea of how we have billionaires or trillionaire companies and all that stuff, that's where it's like, okay, is the scale on that high of a level, does that make sense? Versus like, hey, I can justify millionaires, but the idea of multi-billionaires, does that scale make sense? Now it makes sense relative to how our scale of inflation has gone, but then the argument is that reasonable in the first place with if you're hoping for only like a 2% increase or something like that. but yeah, all in all, it's this idea that we want our currencies to be inflationary so that we can
adjusted over time. Yeah.
well, there's two folds with it, right? One, it's the growth, and
Yeah.
two, it encourages you to spend it. And I
Yeah.
believe I mentioned both those reasons in the banking and currency episode, but nevertheless, those economies don't want you to save your money,
No.
because if you're
No. No.
saving your money, you're not putting that money
It's
into the
not in
economy.
circulation. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're not putting it into the economy, then the economy is not being stimulated, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Um, everything in economics is about producing goods and services,
Correct.
right?
And selling them. Yeah.
Yeah. So the exchange of goods and services, right? So if you're not if your money year over year is worth more, then of course you're going to just sit on it, because you'll be like, hey, I'll
Yeah.
sit on this for 5 years, I'll be I'll be
loaded.
rich, right?
Yeah. I'll be a millionaire. Yeah.
Yeah. um so it's that kind of concept that economists and central banks and governments are trying to do that bit of a balancing act, right? To
Yeah.
navigate the demands of society, right, with the overall rate of inflation. Because of course there's things that governments and stuff like that have to spend money on
Yeah.
or support, right? In the case of like stimulus packages. But then we have the flip side of, like, if I support you too much, then I've overinflated things, right? Because
Thanks.
things
Yeah.
can't catch
Exactly.
up,
And now it's just
right?
hyper inflated. Yeah.
Yeah, it can go to the point of
So yeah.
hyperinflation.
Which I'm
But
sure most people have seen the examples of, like Germany at the end, like in the early
yep,
20s. The
yeah,
euros
post
full of
World War
cash
One,
for a
yeah,
loaf of bread. Yeah.
yeah. Now that,
That's an extreme
well, yeah, one, that's an extreme example, and two, that has nothing to do with actual German policies. It
policies.
has
Yeah.
to
That
deal
was
with other things that
like
I think you're going to
external
do
factors.
a history episode on that. So
Yeah. We'll be
so
getting
we'll
to that.
leave that there, right? Um,
Yeah. It's
but
been
yeah,
thinking.
so there's multiple factors when it comes to that type of inflation. I guess that would be maybe a cost push, if not
More than anything else. Yeah. Not a
yeah, cost
demand
push
pull
mixed with with government policies, but not the domestic government policy.
policies. Yeah.
Um,